I never thought I'd be the one to say, "My husband is cheating on me." But there I was, staring at messages that shattered my world. How did I go from a happily married nurse to a woman frantically searching for proof of betrayal? It all started with a simple video call and a gut feeling that something wasn't right. Suddenly, my perfect life became a maze of lies and secret meetings. I thought I knew my husband better than anyone, but did I really know him at all? As I unraveled the web of deceit, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. But the biggest surprise, it wasn't just about catching him in the act. It was about what I found within myself. Was this betrayal the end of my story, or just the beginning of a new chapter? I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am. It's funny how life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment, you think you have it all figured out, and the next, your whole world turns upside down. I'm Sarah, and this is the story of how I discovered my husband's betrayal and found the strength to rebuild my life. It all started on what seemed like just another ordinary day. I woke up early as usual to prepare breakfast for Michael before we both headed off to work. As I stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes and humming to myself, I felt a rush of excitement. Our 10th wedding anniversary was coming up, and I had been planning a surprise getaway for weeks. I heard Michael's footsteps coming down the stairs, and I quickly hid the brochure for the beach resort I'd booked. "Morning, honey," I called out, sliding a plate of pancakes across the counter. "I made your favorite." Michael smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thanks, Sarah. You're always so thoughtful." He sat down and started eating, his eyes glued to his phone. I frowned, feeling a twinge of disappointment. Lately, it seemed like Michael was always distracted. I pushed the feeling aside, chalking it up to stress at work. "So, any big plans for today?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He glanced up, looking slightly startled. "Oh, just the usual. Meetings, calls, you know how it is." He went back to his phone, typing furiously. I nodded, turning back to the stove to hide my expression. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. After all, we'd been happy for so long. Why would anything change now? As I cleaned up the kitchen, I thought about how we'd met. It was at a charity run for the hospital where I worked as a nurse. Michael had been volunteering, handing out water bottles. He'd tripped and spilled water all over me, and we'd both laughed so hard we could barely breathe. From that moment on, we'd been inseparable. I smiled at the memory, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. That's when I decided to do something special for Michael, just because I'd surprise him at work with his favorite lunch from that little deli he loved. During my lunch break, I hurried to the deli, picked up Michael's usual order, and made my way to his office. As I walked through the doors of the building, I felt a flutter of excitement. It had been ages since I'd surprised him like this. I stepped out of the elevator and walked towards Michael's office, nodding hello to his coworkers. As I approached his door, I heard his voice. He was laughing, that deep, genuine laugh I loved so much. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard him say, "I can't wait to see you later." I froze, my heart suddenly pounding. It was probably nothing, I told myself, just a client or a colleague. But something in his tone made me hesitate. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the door. The laughter inside immediately stopped. "Come in," Michael called out, his voice sounding slightly strained. I pushed open the door, plastering a smile on my face. "Surprise?" I said, holding up the bag of food. Michael's face went through a series of expressions so quickly I almost missed them. Surprise, guilt, then a forced smile. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I held up the bag. "I thought I'd surprise you with lunch. Is this a bad time?" He stood up quickly, coming around his desk. No, of course not. That's so sweet of you." He took the bag from me, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "I was just wrapping up a call with a client." I nodded, looking around the office. Everything seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Well, I hope you enjoy it. I should get back to work." As I turned to leave, I noticed Michael's laptop screen. He'd minimized whatever he'd been looking at, but I could have sworn I saw a flash of a social media profile. Definitely not work-related. "Thanks again, honey," Michael said, practically ushering me out the door. "I'll see you at home later." As I walked back to my car, I tried to push away the nagging doubts creeping into my mind. Michael loved me. We were happy, weren't we? Little did I know, that simple act of kindness, bringing my husband lunch, would be the first step in unraveling the life I thought I knew. I tried to push those nagging doubts away, but they kept creeping back. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing little things that just didn't add up. It was like trying to put together a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. One evening, I was curled up on the couch with a book when Michael came home late again. "Hey, honey," I called out. "How was work?" "Oh, the usual," he replied, his voice muffled as he hung up his coat. "Lots of meetings and calls." I put my book down and watched as he walked into the living room, loosening his tie. "You've been having a lot of late nights lately," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. Michael shrugged, not quite meeting my eyes. "Yeah, we've got this big project coming up. The client's really demanding." I nodded. Even though something in my gut told me there was more to it. "Well, I saved you some dinner. It's in the fridge if you want it." "Thanks, but I grabbed something on the way home," he said, already heading towards the stairs. "I've got some more work to do. I'll be in the office if you need me." I watched him go, a knot forming in my stomach. It wasn't just the late nights or the vague explanations. It was the way he seemed to be pulling away, bit by bit. The next day, I was folding laundry when I heard Michael's phone buzz on the bedside table. I glanced over, not intending to snoop, but the name on the screen caught my eye. "Jessica from work." The message preview read, "Can't wait for our meeting later." I felt my heart skip a beat. It was probably nothing, I told myself, just a coworker being friendly. But why did it feel so off? That night, Michael announced he had another late meeting. "It's a video call with some clients overseas," he explained, heading to his home office. "Might be a couple of hours." I nodded, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. "Okay, have a good call." About an hour later, I walked past the office to get a glass of water. The door was closed, but I could hear Michael's voice. He was laughing, that deep, genuine laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in weeks. "You're hilarious," I heard him say. "I wish I could see you in person instead of just on this screen." I froze, my hand halfway to the doorknob. This didn't sound like a business call, not at all. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The laughter inside immediately stopped. "Just a second," Michael called out, his voice slightly panicked. When he opened the door, his cheeks were flushed, and his hair was messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. "Hey, Sarah. Did you need something?" I peered past him into the office. His laptop was open on the desk, but the screen was black. "I just wanted to check if you needed anything. Your call sounded fun." Michael's smile was too wide, too forced. "Oh yeah, Jim from accounting was just telling a funny story. You know how he is." I nodded slowly, even though I knew for a fact that Jim from accounting was about as funny as a brick wall. "Right. Well, don't let me interrupt." As I walked away, I heard the office door close and lock behind me. The sound echoed in my ears like a final nail in a coffin. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Michael was always on his phone, but he'd turn the screen away when I walked by. He'd take calls in another room, his voice low and secretive. And then there were the work emergencies that seemed to pop up every weekend. One Saturday morning, I woke up to find Michael already dressed and heading out the door. "Where are you going?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. "Oh, there's a crisis at work. Some files got corrupted, and we need to recreate them before Monday," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'll probably be gone most of the day." I watched him leave, feeling a mix of suspicion and hurt. When did we become strangers living in the same house? Later that day, I called Michael's office. planning to ask if he wanted me to bring him lunch. To my surprise, his assistant answered, "I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson, but Michael isn't in today," she said, sounding confused. "Is everything okay?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Oh, yes, everything's fine," I managed to say. "I must have misunderstood his plans for today. Thanks anyway." As I hung up the phone, I felt tears stinging my eyes. The evidence was piling up, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was very, very wrong in my marriage. That night, when Michael came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for him. He walked in, whistling, a shopping bag in his hand. "Hey, honey," he said, his smile faltering when he saw my expression. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation I never thought I'd have to have. "Michael, we need to talk." Michael's face fell as he sat down across from me. "What's wrong?" "Sarah?" he asked, his voice laced with concern that I couldn't quite believe anymore. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "I called your office today," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "Your assistant said you weren't there." For a split second, I saw panic flash across his face before he composed himself. "Oh, right. I ended up working from a coffee shop. The Wi-Fi at the office was down." I nodded slowly, feeling a lump form in my throat. "That's funny because you told me this morning that you were going to the office to recreate some corrupted files." Michael's eyes darted away from mine, and I could almost see the gears turning in his head as he tried to come up with an explanation. Did I? I must have misspoken. It's been such a hectic day. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him, but the doubt had taken root, and it was growing with every lie, every inconsistency. "Michael," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what's really going on?" He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Sarah, honey, nothing's going on. I've just been under a lot of stress at work. I'm sorry if I've been distant lately." I looked at our joined hands, remembering all the times those hands had comforted me, supported me. Now, they felt like they belonged to a stranger. "Is there someone else?" I asked. The words tasting bitter in my mouth. Michael's eyes widened. "What? No, how could you even think that?" He stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen. "I can't believe you don't trust me." I felt a surge of anger at his indignation. "How can I trust you when you're clearly lying to me? You're never home, you're always on your phone, and now I find out you're not even where you say you are." He ran his hands through his hair. A gesture I once found endearing, but now seemed like a tell. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. I told you, I've been busy with work." Too busy to spend time with your wife? Too busy to even have a conversation with me that doesn't involve you running off to your office? I could feel tears threatening to spill over, but I held them back. I wouldn't let him see how much he was hurting me. Michael's expression softened, and he came back to the table, kneeling beside my chair. "Sarah, I'm sorry, I know I've been distant lately. Let me make it up to you. How about we go away for the weekend, just the two of us?" I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that maybe I was just being paranoid, that all of this was just a misunderstanding. But something in my gut told me there was more to the story. "Okay," I said finally, forcing a smile. "That sounds nice." Michael grinned, looking relieved. "Great. I'll make all the arrangements. It'll be just like old times." As he kissed my cheek and headed upstairs, I sat there, feeling hollow. I knew I should be excited about the trip, but all I could think about was the shopping bag he'd brought home, the one he'd quickly stashed away when he saw me waiting for him. Over the next few days, I tried to push my suspicions aside. Michael seemed to be making an effort, coming home earlier and being more attentive. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, I heard Michael's phone buzz. He quickly snatched it up, angling the screen away from me. "Just work," he muttered, typing out a response. I nodded, pretending to be absorbed in my book, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw him smile at whatever message he'd received. It wasn't his polite work smile. It was the kind of smile he used to reserve for me. The next morning, as Michael was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked his phone. My hands were shaking as I picked it up, guilt and fear warring inside me. But I had to know. There were dozens of messages from Jessica from work. As I scrolled through them, my heart sank. They were flirty, intimate, filled with inside jokes and plans to meet up. I put the phone down just as I heard the shower turn off. When Michael came out of the bathroom, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. I looked up at him. This man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. "Who's Jessica?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. Michael froze, a deer caught in headlights. "What?" "Jessica from work," I clarified. "The one you've been texting nonstop. The one you make plans with behind my back." His face went through a series of emotions: shock, guilt, anger. "You went through my phone?" he asked, his voice rising. "How could you invade my privacy like that?" I laughed, a hollow sound that surprised even me. "Your privacy? What about our marriage, Michael? What about the vows we made?" He sat down heavily on the bed, his head in his hands. "Sarah, it's not what you think." But I was done listening to excuses. I stood up, my whole body shaking. "I think it's exactly what I think. I think you've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back. I think you've been having an affair." Michael looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, please, let me explain." But as I looked at him, all I could see were the lies, the late nights, the secretive phone calls. All I could feel was the betrayal, sharp and painful in my chest. "I don't want to hear it," I said, my voice breaking. "I need some air." As I walked out of our bedroom, out of the house we'd made a home, I felt like my whole world was crumbling around me. The man I loved, the life I thought we had, it had all been a lie, and I had no idea what to do next. I spent hours walking around the neighborhood, trying to clear my head. The crisp morning air did little to soothe the turmoil inside me. When I finally returned home, Michael was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. "Sarah," he said, jumping up as I walked in. "I'm so sorry, please let me explain." I held up a hand, stopping him. "Not now, Michael. I need time to think." He nodded, looking dejected. "I understand. I'll give you some space." As he left the room, I sank onto the couch, feeling utterly lost. What was I supposed to do now? How could I just go on with my life knowing that the man I loved, the man I trusted, had betrayed me? That night, I tossed and turned in our bed while Michael slept on the couch downstairs. My mind was racing, replaying every moment of the past few weeks, looking for signs I might have missed. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face putting on a brave face and pretending everything was fine. As I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, I made a decision. I needed answers, and I was going to get them. I started with Michael's laptop. He always left it at home when he went to work, claiming he preferred to use his work computer at the office. Now I wondered if that had been just another lie. To my surprise, the laptop wasn't password protected. I felt a twinge of guilt as I opened his browser, but I pushed it aside. He'd lost the right to privacy when he decided to cheat. I checked his browsing history first. Most of it seemed innocuous: work emails, news sites, online shopping. But then I noticed something odd. There were frequent visits to a site I didn't recognize, always late at night or early in the morning when I was asleep. My hands shook as I clicked on the link. It was a dating site, one of those discreet ones for people looking to have affairs. My stomach churned as I saw Michael's profile pop up. Successful businessman looking for excitement. The description read, "Married, but unsatisfied." Let's keep this our little secret. I closed the laptop, feeling sick. How long had this been going on? How many women had he been talking to behind my back? I spent the rest of the day in a daze, alternating between crying and feeling numb. When Michael came home from work, he tried to talk to me again, but I couldn't bear to look at him. "Sarah, please," he begged. "Let's talk about this. I know I messed up, but I love you. We can work through this." I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I could see were the lies. "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I needed to know the whole truth, no matter how much it hurt. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called my best friend, Lisa, and asked if I could borrow her car for the day. She agreed, though I could hear the concern in her voice. "Sarah, is everything okay?" she asked. "You sound off." I forced a laugh. "Everything's fine. I just need to run some errands, and my car's in the shop." I hated lying to her, but I couldn't bring myself to explain what was really going on. Not yet. I parked Lisa's car a block away from Michael's office and waited. I felt ridiculous, like a character in some cheesy detective novel. But I needed to see for myself what Michael was really up to during these late nights at the office. Hours ticked by. I was about to give up when I saw Michael exit the building. My heart raced as I watched him walk to his car. But instead of heading home, he drove in the opposite direction. I followed him, careful to keep a few cars between us. We drove for about 20 minutes before he pulled into the parking lot of a small cafe. I parked across the street, my heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone around could hear it. Michael got out of his car and walked into the cafe. Through the window, I could see him scanning the room. And then I saw her. A woman stood up, waving to Michael. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair and a dazzling smile. As I watched, Michael walked over to her table. They hugged, and then they kissed. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Seeing it with my own eyes made it real in a way that all the suspicious behavior and secretive texts hadn't. My husband, the man I'd loved for over a decade, was cheating on me. I don't know how long I sat there, watching them through the cafe window. They were laughing, talking animatedly, holding hands across the table. They looked happy. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I started the car and drove home, tears blurring my vision. When I got there, I went straight to our bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. I was throwing clothes into it when I heard the front door open. "Sarah," Michael called out. "Are you home?" I didn't answer. I just kept packing, my movements frantic. Michael appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Sarah, what are you doing?" I looked up at him, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt calm. "I'm leaving, Michael," I said. I can't do this anymore." He stepped into the room, his hands outstretched. "Sarah, please, let's talk about this. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "Love me? Is that what you call it? Sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face every day?" Michael's face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It didn't mean anything, I swear. It was just a mistake." I zipped up the suitcase and stood up, facing him. "No, Michael. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. What you did, that was a choice. You chose her over me, over our marriage, every single time you lied to me." As I walked past him, suitcase in hand, he grabbed my arm. "Please, don't go. Tell me what I can do to make this right." I looked at him. This man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. "Oh, you can let me go," I said quietly. "Because right now, that's the only thing that will make this right." And with that, I walked out of our house, out of the life we'd built together. I had no idea what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I deserved better than this. And I was going to find it with or without Michael. I ended up at Lisa's place, my hands shaking as I rang the doorbell. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with my suitcase, her eyes widened. "Sarah, what's going on?" she asked, pulling me into a hug. I broke down then. sobbing into her shoulder as she guided me inside. Between hiccups and tears, I told her everything: the late nights, the secretive behavior, the woman at the cafe. Lisa listened, her face a mix of shock and anger. "That bastard," she muttered, pulling me in for another hug. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You don't deserve this." I spent the next few days in a daze, barely eating or sleeping. My phone was flooded with messages and missed calls from Michael, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was there left to say? Lisa was amazing, giving me space when I needed it and offering a shoulder to cry on when the pain became too much. But as the days turned into a week, I knew I couldn't hide at her place forever. "I need to figure out what to do next," I said one morning over coffee. Lisa nodded, her face serious. "Hey, have you thought about hiring a private investigator? It might help to have concrete evidence if you decide to, divorce him," I finished, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. "I don't know, Lisa. Part of me wants to know everything, but another part is scared of what I might find out." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you." After much deliberation, I decided to hire a PI. If I was going to make a decision about my future, I needed to know the whole truth. The PI, a no-nonsense woman named Carol, met me at a small cafe. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out a notepad. I spilled it all: the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the woman at the cafe. Carol listened intently, jotting down notes. "Okay," she said when I finished. "I'll need a week or two to gather information. In the meantime, try to act normal. Go back home if you can. The more routine everything seems, the easier it'll be for me to catch him if he's up to something." The thought of going back home, of facing Michael, made my stomach churn. But I knew she was right. So, with a heavy heart, I packed up my things and headed back to the house I once called home. Michael was there when I arrived, pacing in the living room. When he saw me, his face lit up with hope. "Sarah, you're back. I've been so worried. Can we talk, please?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Not now, Michael. I need some time." His face fell, but he nodded. "I understand. I'm just glad you're home." The next 2 weeks were a strange dance of avoidance and forced normalcy. Michael and I moved around each other like ghosts, barely speaking beyond necessary pleasantries. I went to work, came home, made dinner, all the while feeling like I was playing a role in some bizarre play. Meanwhile, Carol kept me updated on her findings. She'd followed Michael to several business meetings that turned out to be rendezvous with the blonde woman from the cafe. She'd also uncovered evidence of hotel bookings and secret email accounts. Each new piece of information felt like a fresh wound. How long had this been going on? How many times had he lied to my face, kissed me goodbye, all while planning to meet her? One evening, as I was making dinner, Michael came into the kitchen. "Sarah, can we please talk? I can't stand this silence anymore." I turned to face him, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "Okay, Michael, let's talk. Why don't you start by telling me about Jessica?" His face paled. "What?" "Jessica," I repeated. "The woman you've been seeing behind my back for months. The one you meet at that little cafe across town. The one you book hotel rooms for." Michael's mouth opened and closed. No words coming out. Finally, he slumped into a chair, his head in his hands. "How did you find out?" I laughed, a hollow sound. "Does it matter? What matters is that you've been lying to me, betraying me, for God knows how long." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. It didn't mean anything. I swear, it was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I echoed, feeling anger bubble up inside me. "A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. What you did was a choice, Michael. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around behind my back, to throw away our marriage." Tears were streaming down his face now. "Please, Sarah, I love you. We can work through this. I'll do anything to make it right." I looked at him, this man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a profound emptiness. "There's nothing to work through, Michael," I said quietly. "You broke us, and I don't think I can put us back together again." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving him sitting there, his sobs echoing behind me. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, no, my bedroom now, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. The truth was out, the lies were exposed, and now, finally, I could start to figure out what came next. I spent that night packing up my things, my mind racing with plans and possibilities. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, my marriage was over. Yes, the future I thought I had was gone. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for a new future. One where I didn't have to wonder if I was being lied to. One where I could be true to myself. As the sun rose, casting a soft glow through the bedroom window, I zipped up my last suitcase. I took one last look around the room where I'd spent so many years, where I'd loved and laughed and dreamed. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up my bags and walked out, ready to face whatever came next. I moved back in with Lisa, grateful for her unwavering support. The first few days were a blur of tears and sleepless nights, but slowly, I started to feel like myself again, or at least, a new version of myself. "You need to get out of the house," Lisa declared one morning, pulling open the curtains in the guest room. "We're going for a walk," I groaned, pulling the covers over my head. "I don't feel like it, Liz." She yanked the blanket away, her face stern but kind. "That's exactly why you need to do it. Come on, fresh air will do you good." Reluctantly, I got dressed and followed her outside. As we walked through the park, the sun warming my face, I had to admit she was right. It felt good to be out in the world again. "So," Lisa said as we sat on a bench, watching kids play on the swings, "have you thought about what you want to do next?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Honestly, I have no idea. Everything I thought I knew about my life has been turned upside down." Lisa nodded, her eyes sympathetic. "What about your job? Do you think you'll stay at the hospital?" I hadn't even thought about work. The hospital where I nursed was full of memories. It was where Michael and I had met after all. "I don't know," I said slowly. Maybe it's time for a change." "Well, whatever you decide, I'm here for you," Lisa said, squeezing my hand. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started looking for a new apartment, something that was just mine. I updated my resume and started browsing job listings, wondering if maybe it was time to try something new. One evening, as I was scrolling through job postings, an ad caught my eye. A new medical clinic was opening up across town, and they were looking for experienced nurses. It was a chance to start fresh, away from the memories that haunted every corridor of the hospital. Before I could talk myself out of it, I sent in my application. To my surprise, I got a call the very next day asking me to come in for an interview. The interview went well, and as I walked out of the clinic, I felt a spark of excitement for the first time in months. This could be a new beginning, a chance to redefine myself. A week later, I got the call. They wanted to offer me the job. I accepted on the spot, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. As I hung up the phone, Lisa burst into the room, a bottle of champagne in hand. I heard, "Congratulations." We toasted to new beginnings, and for the first time since discovering Michael's betrayal, I felt truly hopeful about the future. The next day, I went to the hospital to hand in my resignation. As I walked through the familiar halls, I was hit with a wave of nostalgia. This place had been such a big part of my life for so long. "Sarah!" a voice called out. I turned to see Dr. Thompson, one of the senior doctors I'd worked with for years. "I heard you're leaving us. Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, plastering on a smile. "Everything's fine, Dr. Thompson. Just time for a change, you know?" He nodded, his eyes kind. Well, we're going to miss you around here. You're one of our best nurses. As I walked out of the hospital for the last time, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. It was the end of an era, but also the start of something new. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I found a small apartment not far from my new job, and Lisa helped me move in. As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, I felt a sense of ownership I hadn't experienced in years. "This place is so you," Lisa said, looking around the living room. "I love it." I smiled, surveying my new home. It was small but bright and airy, and most importantly, it was mine. No traces of Michael, no memories lurking in every corner. As I settled into my new routine, new job, new home, new life, I started to feel more like myself again. The pain of Michael's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it no longer consumed me. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Michael. My heart raced as I opened it. "Sarah, I know I have no right to contact you, but I need to talk to you, please. It's important." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the delete button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to continue moving on with my life. But another part, a part I thought I'd buried, was curious. After a long internal debate, I typed out a reply. "Okay, coffee shop on Main Street, tomorrow at 2 p.m. As I hit send, I wondered if I was making a mistake, but I also knew that if I ever wanted to truly move on, I needed closure. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, my stomach in knots. When Michael walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked tired, his clothes rumpled, his usual confident stride replaced by a hesitant shuffle. "Sarah," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thank you for meeting me." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Michael cleared his throat. I wanted to tell you that Jessica and it's over. It was over the moment you found out, actually." I raised an eyebrow, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Michael shook his head quickly. No, I wanted you to know, and I wanted to apologize. Again. What I did, it's unforgivable. I know that now." I looked at him. This man I'd once loved more than anything in the world, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just a vague sense of pity. "You're right," I said quietly. "It is unforgivable, but I'm not here for your apology, Michael. I'm here for closure, and I think I just got it." I stood up, gathering my purse. Michael looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, please, isn't there any chance?" I shook my head, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "No, Michael, there isn't. Goodbye." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in months. The last tie to my old life had been severed, and I was ready to fully embrace my new one. That night, as I curled up on my couch with a book, I realized something. For the first time since discovering Michael's betrayal, I wasn't thinking about him, or what he'd done, or what might have been. I was thinking about the future. My future. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it held. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new life. The job at the clinic was challenging but rewarding, and I found myself looking forward to work each day. My new apartment became a sanctuary, a place where I could be completely myself. One Friday evening, as I was getting ready to leave work, my colleague Emily stopped by my station. "Hey Sarah, a bunch of us are going out for drinks. Want to join?" My first instinct was to decline. I'd been so focused on rebuilding my life that I hadn't really thought about socializing. But then I remembered Lisa's words about getting out more. "You know what? That sounds great," I said, surprising myself. The bar was crowded and noisy, but in a comforting way. As I sipped my drink and chatted with my coworkers, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time: joy. "So, Sarah," Emily said, leaning in conspiratorially, Any special someone in your life? I laughed, shaking my head. No, definitely not. I'm taking some time for myself right now. Emily nodded understandingly. Well, when you're ready to get back out there, let me know. I've got a cute single brother who'd be perfect for you. As I lay in bed that night, Emily's words echoed in my mind. Was I ready to start dating again? The thought both excited and terrified me. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of texts from Lisa. Emergency brunch meeting. My place. 11 a.m. No excuses. When I arrived at Lisa's apartment, she was practically bouncing with excitement. Guess what? She squealed as soon as I walked in. I'm getting married. I felt a pang in my chest, memories of my own failed marriage threatening to surface. But I pushed them aside, genuinely happy for my friend. Lisa, that's amazing. Congratulations. As we sat down to eat, Lisa couldn't stop gushing about her fiancé and their plans. And of course, she said, reaching across the table to grab my hand, I want you to be my maid of honor. I felt tears prick my eyes. Are you sure? I mean, with everything that's happened? Lisa squeezed my hand. Sarah, you're my best friend. There's no one else I'd want by my side. As I hugged her goodbye later, promising to start planning her bachelorette party, I felt a mix of emotions. I was thrilled for Lisa, but I couldn't help feeling a twinge of envy. She had found her happily ever after, while I was still piecing my life back together. On my way home, I decided to stop by the mall. If I was going to be a maid of honor, I needed a new dress. As I browsed through the racks, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. I know I have no right to ask, but I need your help. Can we meet? I stared at the message, my heart racing. What could he possibly need my help with? Against my better judgment, I found myself typing out a reply. Okay, coffee shop on 5th, tomorrow at 3. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop early, my stomach in knots. When Michael walked in, I was struck by how different he looked. He'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Sarah, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for coming. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before Michael cleared his throat. I need your help with something work-related, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. There's this project I've been working on, and I remember you had some great ideas about it before. Everything happened. I raised an eyebrow. And you couldn't ask anyone else about this. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. And the truth is, I'm in trouble at work. This project could save my job, but I'm completely stuck. You were always so good at thinking outside the box. I thought maybe... As he trailed off, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to help him, to fall back into our old dynamic of supporting each other. But another part, a stronger part, knew that wasn't my role anymore. I'm sorry, Michael, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But I can't help you with this. It's not my responsibility anymore. His face fell, but he nodded. I understand. I shouldn't have asked. I'm sorry. As I stood up to leave, Michael reached out, his hand hovering over mine but not quite touching. Sarah, I miss you. Every day I know I messed up, but is there any chance? I cut him off, shaking my head. No, Michael, there isn't. What we had is gone, and it's not coming back. I hope you figure out your work situation, but that's not my problem anymore. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time since our divorce, I truly felt like I was moving on. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Hey, remember that brother I mentioned? He's in town next weekend and would love to meet you. No pressure, just dinner if you're up for it. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. Was I ready for this? The thought of dating again was terrifying, but also, exciting. Taking a deep breath, I typed out a reply. You know what? That sounds great. Count me in. As I hit send, I felt a flutter of nervousness in my stomach. But underneath that was something else. Hope. Hope for new beginnings, new experiences, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at happiness again. I fell asleep that night with a smile on my face, looking forward to what the future might hold. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly excited about what was to come. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and energized. As I got ready for work, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and was surprised by what I saw. The woman looking back at me wasn't the broken, betrayed wife I'd been just a few months ago. She was strong, confident, and ready to take on the world. I realized then that meeting with Michael hadn't set me back like I'd feared it might. Instead, it had shown me just how far I'd come. I was no longer defined by my failed marriage or Michael's betrayal. I was Sarah, on my own terms, ready to write the next chapter of my life. And as I headed out the door, ready to face whatever the day might bring, I felt a sense of peace and excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The future was wide open, and I couldn't wait to see what it held. The week leading up to my dinner with Emily's brother flew by in a blur of work and wedding planning with Lisa. Before I knew it, Saturday evening had arrived, and I was standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear. It's just dinner, I muttered to myself, pulling out a simple black dress. No need to overthink it. As I was putting the finishing touches on my makeup, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Tom's running a few minutes late. Don't worry, he's usually very punctual. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. It was just dinner, I reminded myself. No pressure, no expectations. When I arrived at the restaurant, I spotted Tom immediately. He was standing near the entrance, looking slightly nervous but with a warm smile on his face. Sarah, he asked as I approached. I'm Tom. It's great to meet you. As we sat down and started chatting, I felt myself relaxing. Tom was easy to talk to with a quick wit and a kind smile. We discovered we had a lot in common, a love of hiking, a passion for old movies, even the same favorite ice cream flavor. The evening flew by, and before I knew it, the waiter was clearing our dessert plates. As we walked out of the restaurant, Tom turned to me with a slightly shy smile. I had a really great time tonight, Sarah. Would you like to do this again sometime? I felt a flutter in my stomach, not nervousness this time, but excitement. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Over the next few weeks, Tom and I went on several more dates. We took long walks in the park, tried out new restaurants, and even went to a cooking class together, which ended in disaster but gave us plenty to laugh about. I found myself looking forward to our time together, enjoying the simple pleasure of getting to know someone new. But there was still a part of me that held back, afraid to fully open up. One evening, as we were walking back to my apartment after dinner, Tom stopped and turned to face me. Sarah, I really like you, he said, his voice serious. But I can't help feeling like there's something holding you back. If you're not ready for this, I understand. I felt a lump form in my throat. Tom deserved the truth. Taking a deep breath, I told him everything about Michael, the affair, the painful divorce. As I spoke, I felt tears rolling down my cheeks. When I finished, Tom was quiet for a moment. Then, to my surprise, he pulled me into a gentle hug. Thank you for telling me, he said softly. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you. We stood there for a while, his arms around me, and I felt something shift inside me. For the first time since the divorce, I felt truly seen and understood. As the weeks turned into months, my relationship with Tom grew stronger. He was patient and understanding, never pushing me to move faster than I was comfortable with. And slowly, I felt the walls I'd built around my heart start to crumble. One Saturday morning, as we were having breakfast at my favorite cafe, Tom reached across the table and took my hand. Sarah, he said, his eyes serious. I need to tell you something." My heart skipped a beat, old fears threatening to surface, but Tom's next words surprised me. "I got a job offer," he said. "It's a great opportunity, but it's in another city. I wanted to talk to you about it before I made any decisions." I felt a mix of emotions: pride in Tom's success, fear of what this might mean for us, and surprisingly, a fierce determination not to let fear dictate my life again. "That's amazing, Tom," I said, squeezing his hand. "Tell me more about it." As he talked about the job, his eyes lit up with excitement. And as I listened, I realized something important. I didn't want to lose Tom. More than that, I was ready to take a chance on love again. "I think you should take it," I said when he finished. Tom's face fell slightly, but before he could speak, I continued. "And I think I'd like to come with you, if you want me to. That is..." Tom's eyes widened in surprise, then crinkled with joy. "Are you sure? Sarah, nothing would make me happier, but I don't want you to feel pressured." I shook my head, feeling more certain by the second. "I'm sure. I love you, Tom, and I'm ready for a new adventure." As Tom pulled me into a kiss right there in the middle of the cafe, I felt a surge of joy and excitement. This wasn't the life I had planned, but maybe it was even better. That evening, as I was packing up some of my things, I came across an old photo album. Inside was a picture of Michael and me on our wedding day. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness for the life I thought I'd have. But then I thought about Tom, about the future we were building together, and I realized something. Michael's betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also given me the chance to rebuild myself, stronger and wiser than before. I closed the album and put it in a box marked Donate. As I did, I felt the last remnants of my old life falling away. I was ready for whatever came next. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. There was an apartment to find in our new city, jobs to quit, goodbyes to say. But through it all, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. The night before we were set to leave, Lisa threw us a going-away party. As I looked around at my friends, at Tom by my side, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I'm going to miss you so much," Lisa said, pulling me into a tight hug. "But I'm so happy for you, Sarah. You deserve this." As Tom and I drove out of town the next morning, I watched my old life disappear in the rearview mirror. But instead of sadness, all I felt was hope. Hope for the future, for new beginnings, for love. I reached over and took Tom's hand, smiling as he gave it a gentle squeeze. We were heading into the unknown, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. As the miles rolled by, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the struggle to find myself again, but also the strength I'd discovered, the friendships that had sustained me, and the love I'd found when I least expected it. I realized then that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places. And as we drove towards our new life together, I couldn't wait to see what the future held. Our new life in the city was a whirlwind of excitement and challenges. Tom and I found a cozy apartment in a bustling neighborhood, and I quickly secured a position at a local hospital. Everything was new and different, but in the best possible way. One evening, about a month after we'd moved, I was sorting through some old papers when I came across a folder I didn't recognize. Curious, I opened it and felt my heart skip a beat. Inside were documents related to a project Michael had been working on before our divorce, the one he'd asked for my help with that day at the coffee shop. As I flipped through the pages, something caught my eye. There, in the margins, were notes in my handwriting, ideas I jotted down when Michael had first told me about the project, long before everything fell apart. I sat there, staring at the papers, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Part of me was angry that Michael had used my ideas without credit, but another part of me felt a strange sense of pride. Even in the midst of our failing marriage, I'd been capable of contributing something valuable. That night, as Tom and I were getting ready for bed, I told him about what I'd found. I don't know why it's bothering me so much, I admitted. It's not like I want anything to do with Michael or his work anymore. Tom listened patiently, then wrapped his arms around me. It's okay to feel conflicted, Sarah. What he did wasn't right. But maybe this is an opportunity. I looked up at him, confused. An opportunity for what? To reclaim your ideas, he said simply. To use them for something that's all yours. His words stuck with me, and over the next few days, I found myself thinking more and more about the project. The core idea, a new approach to patient care that emphasized emotional well-being alongside physical health, was something I'd always been passionate about. One day at work, during a particularly frustrating shift where I felt like I couldn't give my patients the care they deserved, something clicked. I realized that the ideas I'd had for Michael's project could be adapted and implemented right here in my own workplace. Excited, I started jotting down notes and plans whenever I had a spare moment. I researched similar initiatives at other hospitals, refining and expanding my ideas. Before I knew it, I had the outline of a comprehensive program that could revolutionize patient care. When I shared my plans with Tom, his face lit up with pride. Sarah, this is amazing. You need to present this to the hospital board. The thought terrified me, but I knew he was right. This was my chance to make a real difference, to create something meaningful out of the ashes of my past. Preparing for the presentation was nerve-wracking. I spent weeks refining my proposal, practicing my pitch, and trying to anticipate every possible question. Tom was my rock through it all, offering encouragement and acting as a sounding board for my ideas. The night before the big day, as I was going over my notes one last time, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Lisa. I just wanted to wish you luck tomorrow. You've got this, girl. Show them how amazing you are. Her words brought tears to my eyes. I'd been so caught up in my new life that I hadn't realized how much I missed my old friend. We'd been keeping in touch, but it wasn't the same as having her just a short drive away. The next morning, as I stood in front of the hospital board, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was my moment. My chance to prove to myself and everyone else that I was more than just someone's ex-wife. I was Sarah, and I had something valuable to contribute. As I began my presentation, I saw the board members' expressions change from polite interest to genuine engagement. They asked questions, offered suggestions, and by the end, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the room. When I finished, there was a moment of silence that felt like it stretched on forever. Then the chief of medicine stood up, a smile on his face. Ms. Johnson, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. We'd like to implement a pilot program based on your proposal. I felt dizzy with joy and disbelief. As I left the boardroom, my colleagues crowded around me, offering congratulations and asking questions about the program. For the first time in my career, I felt truly seen and valued for my ideas and abilities. That night, Tom insisted on taking me out to celebrate. As we sat in a cozy restaurant, clinking glasses, he reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so proud of you, Sarah. You took something painful from your past and turned it into something amazing. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were happy tears. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, squeezing his hand. Your support means everything to me. As we walked home that night, hand in hand, I felt a profound sense of peace. I'd faced my fears, reclaimed my ideas, and created something meaningful. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly, completely happy. Over the next few months, I threw myself into implementing the pilot program. It was challenging work, but incredibly rewarding. Seeing the positive impact on patients and staff alike filled me with a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. One day, as I was leaving work, I bumped into Dr. Thompson, who was visiting for a conference. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw me. Sarah, is that you? You look different, happier. I smiled, realizing he was right. I was happier, more confident, more myself than I'd been in years. It's good to see you, Dr. Thompson. How are things back at the old hospital? As we chatted, he mentioned that he'd heard about my new program. It's causing quite a stir in medical circles, he said, looking impressed. You should be very proud. I thanked him, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction. As I walked home that evening, I thought about how far I'd come, from the broken woman who'd discovered her husband's betrayal to someone who was making a real difference in people's lives. When I got home, I found Tom in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. The smell of something burning filled the air, and he had a sheepish look on his face. I wanted to surprise you, he said, gesturing at the smoking pan. But I think I might have surprised the smoke alarm instead. I laughed, feeling a rush of love for this wonderful man who had stood by me through everything. How about we order takeout, I suggested, wrapping my arms around him. As we sat on the couch later, eating Chinese food straight from the cartons, I realized something. This life, with its challenges, its joys, its burnt dinners and professional triumphs, was better than anything I could have imagined for myself a year ago. I'd gone through hell, yes, but I'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and happier than I'd ever been. And as I snuggled closer to Tom, I knew that the best was yet to come. As the months rolled by, my life settled into a new rhythm. The pilot program at the hospital was thriving, expanding beyond our initial expectations. I was busier than ever, but it was the kind of busy that left me feeling fulfilled rather than drained. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone buzzed with an incoming email. I nearly dropped it when I saw the sender. It was from a national medical journal. They wanted to feature my program in their next issue and invited me to write an article about it. Tom, I called out, my voice shaky with excitement. You won't believe this. He came running, toothbrush still in his mouth, and read the email over my shoulder. His face broke into a huge grin. Sarah, this is amazing. I told you your ideas were groundbreaking. As I sat down to write the article, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. It seemed like a lifetime ago that I was Michael's wife, my own dreams and ambitions taking a backseat to his career. Now, here I was, making a name for myself in my own right. The day the journal was published, I received a flood of emails and calls from colleagues across the country, all interested in implementing similar programs in their hospitals. It was overwhelming, but in the best possible way. That evening, as Tom and I were celebrating with a bottle of champagne, my phone rang. It was Lisa. Sarah! She squealed as soon as I picked up. I just saw the article. I'm so proud of you. We chatted for a while, catching up on each other's lives. As we were about to hang up, Lisa hesitated. There's something else, she said, her voice suddenly serious. I thought you should know. Michael's company went bankrupt. It's been all over the local news. I felt a strange mix of emotions at the news. Part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction, karma perhaps, for all the pain he'd caused me. But mostly, I felt nothing. Michael's life, his successes or failures, no longer had any bearing on mine. Thanks for telling me, I said to Lisa. But honestly, it doesn't matter to me anymore. After we hung up, I told Tom about Michael's company. He watched me carefully, probably looking for signs of distress, but all I felt was a sense of closure. You know, I said, taking a sip of champagne, a year ago this news would have devastated me. Now it's just information. It doesn't affect me at all. Tom pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You've come so far, Sarah. I'm so proud of you. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I was invited to speak at medical conferences, consult with other hospitals, even appear on a local news segment about innovative healthcare practices. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Through it all, Tom was my rock. He celebrated my successes, comforted me through my moments of doubt, and never once made me feel like my career was overshadowing our relationship. I found myself falling more in love with him every day. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and interviews, I came home to find the apartment filled with the smell of my favorite meal. Tom had cooked dinner, set the table with candles, and was waiting for me with a glass of wine. "What's all this?" I asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. He smiled, a mix of nervousness and excitement in his eyes. "I wanted to do something special for you. You've been working so hard, achieving so much. I wanted to show you how proud I am, how much I love you." As we sat down to eat, Tom reached across the table and took my hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft but steady, "this past year with you has been the best of my life. You're the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." My heart seemed to stop as he got down on one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Sarah Johnson, will you marry me?" Tears sprang to my eyes as I looked at this wonderful man, this person who had stood by me through everything, who had helped me rebuild my life and rediscover my own strength. "Yes," I whispered, then louder, "Yes, of course I'll marry you." As Tom slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a sense of rightness, of coming full circle. This wasn't the life I had planned for myself all those years ago when I married Michael. It was better. The next day, as I was leaving work, I ran into Carol, the private investigator I'd hired what felt like a lifetime ago. She did a double take when she saw me. "Sarah, is that you? You look different, happier?" I smiled, realizing she was right. I was happier, more confident, more myself than I'd ever been. "It's good to see you, Carol. How have you been?" As we chatted, I found myself telling her about my engagement, my career success, my new life. She listened with a growing smile on her face. "You know," she said when I finished, "in my line of work, I see a lot of people at their lowest points. It's not often I get to see the happy endings. I'm really glad you got yours." Her words stuck with me as I walked home that evening. I thought about the woman I'd been when I first hired Carol. Broken, betrayed, unsure of my future. If someone had told me then that in just over a year, I'd be engaged to a wonderful man, making a real difference in my career, and happier than I'd ever been, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I was, living that reality. I'd gone through hell, yes, but I'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and happier than I'd ever been. As I walked into our apartment, I saw Tom on the couch, surrounded by wedding magazines and looking slightly overwhelmed. I couldn't help but laugh. "Need some help there, fiancé?" I asked, sitting down beside him. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple. "I just want everything to be perfect for you," he said. I snuggled into his side, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "It already is perfect," I said, "because I'm with you." And as we sat there, planning our future together, I knew that whatever challenges life might throw our way, we'd face them together, because I was no longer the woman who had been betrayed and broken. I was Sarah Johnson, strong, successful, and loved. And this was just the beginning of my happily ever after.